Welcome to The Ripple, where extraordinary women executives share their turning points, growing pains, breakthroughs, and triumphs to help you show up with confidence. I'm your host, Ashley Lobbs, and today we're joined by the courageous Karrie Sanderson, a visionary marketing leader who provides go-to-market advice for tech startups and the Fortune 500 as founder of KES Consulting. She's also the former CMO at Typeform and VP of Marketing at Smartsheet. Today, she joins us to share the mindset behind her career success. Well, Karrie, thank you so much for being with us today. It's such an honor to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I feel honored to be asked to be one of your guests.
You know, I relate to you so much. We are both the owners of our own business, and you are really chief everything at KES Marketing. I would love to hear what's exciting you about the work that you're doing in your business right now.
It's super fun right now because what I did after I left my last CMO job was sit down and evaluate, where are my strengths? Where do they really lie? And how can I apply them in this particular market, especially in B2B tech, in a way that both keeps me fulfilled, but also adds some value to whoever I'm working with. And so the three things that I'm really focused on right now are doing some brand strategy work for some clients who either have a gap or they want a different set of eyes on things. The second piece is doing some personal branding work for some executives who are moving up the ranks. They haven't really had a chance to think about what their own voice is in the world. And so I'm helping them, figure out what's their personal brand? How do you show up? What does that look like in the market, no matter what company you're working for? And then the last thing that I'm doing is working with some startups. I have had the wonderful opportunity to be a mentor at Techstars and find that those founder, moments in time are really energizing and challenging. And there's something about my background of marketing, even at really big companies, that gives them a new perspective on how they want to think about growth. So I'm also working with founders on thinking about their marketing roadmaps. One of the things I do like about having my own business is I have the flexibility to kind of work on a lot of different things and be exposed to different industries, different levels of startups, work with individuals, work with teams. It kind of allows me to really draw deeply into my background and apply it in a lot of different scenarios versus in one company.
Well, it sounds like you like to have a lot of things on your plate, a lot of diversity and novelty and just reaching out into new directions. What's the ethos that kind of pushes you in that direction?
For me, if I look back historically, even from way back when in high school, probably, I've followed a sort of unspoken, but now very much spoken mantra of say yes. And I've always been one of those people that in the situations where they're asking somebody to raise their hand to do something different or take on a challenge that no one has taken on before, I find that drawn to that. And I like to say yes to those things. They don't always work out. Sometimes I've raised my hand for something and, maybe it has been a failure, but I learned from that as well. So in my mind, I also am really comfortable with saying yes to failure, saying yes and learning from that and then applying that in the future.
Were you always comfortable with saying yes to failure, or is that something that you had to learn the hard way?
I think I've had to learn it along the way, but it's hard to think about, my high school self to where I am now, right? It's not one big step. It's a lot of series of small steps along the way. So, but yeah, I've always been a bit fearless, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. And the challenges excite me. And if somebody tells me I can't do something, that's a pretty good sign that I'm going to go try to do it.
So you're a
Right.
bit of a contrarian as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. Well, can you tell me about a specific time when you really had to lean on that mantra? Like maybe it wasn't your gut instinct, but you really had to dig deep and say yes.
There's several. There's so many. I'll give you one from that probably tells you a little bit about like how I got to where I am. When I was in high school, I really wanted to be a journalist. And my high school guidance counselor said, "Oh, that's a wonderful, career for a young woman. If you were a young man, given your aptitude for math and science, I would recommend engineering. But, journalism is perfect for a young woman." And I immediately, this is that contrarian side, went into engineering. Like, I'm changing my major, So, and in the end, like that could have been a failure. I mean, I was certainly capable, but and I didn't become an engineer. I got out of it as soon as possible because it wasn't what I wanted to career. However, I'm so grateful for that because the discipline that you get in engineering, I ended up getting a master's in engineering as well. But the discipline that you get with that as your foundation around systems and processes and thinking things through, beyond the first order really have helped me along the way. Another, I guess, a really pivotal change for me out of college, I worked in CPG. So I worked in paper products, beverages. I had the opportunity to work at Coca-Cola, at Starbucks, some really, blue chip brands. And I found myself at a career change moment and I moved into pharma, which it was somebody I knew who said, I think you will love this. And I thought, can I do this? I'm just going to give it a try, and it was learning an entire new industry, highly regulated, pretty hated, among the general population is big pharma idea. But I was really intrigued by the way they market, by how they do things. So the say yes there, I had some apprehension, but I liked the framework of what the role was going to be, and I made it my own. It was super fun, and I learned a lot. You can market in pharma, you can market anywhere because, the regulations are so incredibly intense, the healthcare space that, when you leave it, you feel freed, like, I can do anything. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think finance is similar. There are so many restrictions about what you can and can't
Yeah.
say that it feels like you're operating in such a tiny box.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating to hear how saying yes brought you across a lot of different paths, right? It doesn't seem like your path forward was this necessarily focused and linear thing. I think it sounds like you let your curiosity lead you in whatever direction and kind of figured it out along the way.
Yeah. Definitely the curiosity part. It's been a squiggly line, but I think I'd probably a part of that generation where we flipped from a straight line, find a company, work for then most of, or not all of your career, retire from there. Thing where I'm on that, bridge generation of a little bit of that at the beginning and then a whole lot of squiggles after. Another example though, and that's what brought me into tech, right? To B2B tech specifically, I had taken a sailing trip with my family for 2 years, and when I got back, do I go back into the pharma healthcare space or what else is my opportunity? And a gentleman that I worked with at Coca-Cola for many years, he was the new chief product officer at Smartsheet and said, "We need your kind of marketing thinking here." I don't know anything about tech. I'm 50 years old. How am I going to do this? And I'll tell you, it was it was a leap. I'm like, okay, I'll give it a try. Let's see what this is about. I'd walk from meeting to meeting with one book to take notes and the other book to, like acronyms to look up at the end of the day. Mhm. And
That's so
yeah,
relatable.
yeah, I really did have two notebooks and I learned fast and the principles still apply, right? The marketing mindset, the marketing discipline still applies. It's just in a very different, segment and the pace is different. But in the end, I'm so glad I did it because I found that I really love this space from the earliest scale up startups that I'm doing mentorships with to the, billion-dollar company that I'm, doing brand and content strategy for. So I really like tech. I mean, it's volatile, but I really like it. So that's another like, okay, I'm going to say yes. If it doesn't work out, I guess I'll do something else. I mean, I know that there's always another opportunity if this one doesn't work.
I would love to get your advice about this because say yes isn't my mantra, but I'm the type of person who's always saying yes to too many things at once.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Yes.
so how do you balance the mantra of saying yes with also having balance?
Mhm. Well, that's such a great question. I'm one of those people that the busier I am, the more productive I am. When I have free time, it seems like that's when it's harder to get things done because you think you have more time. So I'll say that first. The second piece is I did learn a little bit too late to say no to things, right? And to prioritize. But even so, the things I'm able to do are because I have such an amazing support system at home. My husband has been a stay-at-home dad for the last 22 years. Our last kid just graduated from high school, so it's a bit interesting. So having that, I mean, I know how lucky I am to have that. But but I also trust my gut a lot. So in the end, you cannot do everything, and I get asked to do a lot of things. I trust my gut a lot and how I feel about it. Do I find myself attracted to it? does that thing end up at the top of my to-do list? That helps me prioritize a little bit. What am I drawn to? What's the first thing I want to work on versus what's that last thing that hits the bottom of your list and you can never quite get to it? There's signal in there that helps me.
I think that's a powerful thing to notice. We all probably have a few things that always end up at the bottom of the to-do list. Sometimes they're the things that don't matter and we shouldn't prioritize. Sometimes they're the really important things that we're just avoiding, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's also
Yeah.
true. I'm a weird one in the sense that I tend to tackle the challenging things first if I like them, but they're hard. Yeah, the complex draws me in. I can figure this out, It's kind of how I'm
Well,
wired.
I think that's part of that contrarian too, is having an
Mhm.
unsolved puzzle probably ignites that determination in you, right?
Yes. And that's funny that you bring that up because I'm such a game player person. I love all kinds of games and puzzles. So that does fit with who I am for sure. But I think the other piece too, like bringing it back to my engineering background, I'm just thirsty for insights. And so as a marketer, I'm very grounded and very interested in what is happening in the market, what is happening with our customers, what is happening with competition, and try to ground everything that I do in that, at least in the insight from that, which should be table stakes, but I think sometimes, especially in tech, you're moving so fast, it's so easy to turn inward and think about what you want to say versus what customers need you to hear. And that is something that I definitely has just been a strong anchor for me. No matter what industry I've been in, is what's the knowledge to draw from to do this thing. I think that has definitely contributed to my success and probably still will for forever. I'm super curious. And I love taking examples from outside of the world I'm in now and thinking how to apply them to what I'm working on.
I think there are a lot of people who, in their own way, talk about following your gut and listening to your gut. What I'm curious to learn from you is how do you develop that instinct? Do you think it's just there, or do you think it's something that with years of experience that you develop? Like, what is that?
I think it's always there. I think we learn to tune it out and to varying degrees depending upon what the situation is. I know I've tuned mine out over the years here and there, sometimes more than not, thinking about what I should do next. What would be the expected next thing for me to be doing? Is it a bigger company? Is it a higher title? Is it, move to a headquarters? All those different things. If you get caught up in the what you should do versus, where are you being drawn to and what's your path? Because you're the only one taking your path, right? So it's so easy to feel like there's a set thing and it's not always the case. So for me, from engineer to brand marketer, moved into kind of customer regional marketing for a while, worked at, paper products, beverages, pharma, healthcare. I had my own agency for 7 years. Took a sailing trip with my family, then came back to tech. I mean, it's the common thread is my like willingness and curiosity, I think, and a little bit of contrarianism, as you said. But along the way, there were certainly times when I found myself getting caught up in the I should do this versus do I want to do this? So I'm getting much better at listening to the voice and the gut and the intuition about what's right for me versus what will people think. I think the balance over my career has gone less about contrarianism and more about in the beginning, it was saying yes to growth, like saying yes to learning. Like the first third of my career was probably like soak in as many opportunities I possibly can and just like really it's almost a take, right? Say yes to taking in as much as I could and opportunities that allowed me to do that. Then the middle part was like, okay, saying yes to really focusing and deepening what I can understand about the things that I'm really drawn to. And then I think I'm at this stage of my career now where I'm saying yes to giving back, taking that expertise in a way that is, of course, I mean, financial things are real, but like what are the I'm very fortunate that I have a great network and referrals have been excellent for my current role, what I'm doing, that people understand my strengths and expertise that I spent a lot of time building and they know when to call me, right? So now I'm like, how do I just really give that back? And there's a teaching element to what I'm doing in every single project. mentorship, leadership, a lot of that informally. So it's almost like yes to like soaking it in, the middle third, yes to deepening, and then at the end, yes to turning around and giving that back as much as I can to whoever needs it now. But again, it's not well, it's only recently that I've thought about probably the last 5 years or so that I've thought about how I would articulate that.
That's so fascinating to hear how what saying yes means has changed over the course of your career and your
Yeah.
life.
I was definitely self-serving when I'm in my early 20s, probably till early 30s. It was a lot of, how does this benefit me? How does this get me along where I want to be in my career, financially, all those things, which are fair and fine. And then once I kind of said, okay, it's a lot of process elimination. I definitely don't want to be an engineer. I definitely don't, all the different kinds of things that you come across. You work with people. I don't want to be a finance person, like all that kind of stuff. And then once I honed in on, customer insight, strategy, brand, leadership, team leadership, then it was a lot of that middle of deepening that experience. And now it's flipping it around. But I don't say yes to everything for sure. It's not like I just run around going, you get a car and you get a car. It's definitely, but it's definitely the common theme. And a lot of things have not worked out. Right. So there's been plenty of failures along the way. But I consider those yeses also because I learned something from it and applied it somewhere different.
I think that there are so many people who want to say yes to something in their life, but they're thinking about what could go wrong or what they should do or what other people think. What would you say to them if they're just getting started on their say yes journey?
Yeah. I did not come up with this, but it resonates with me so much. I don't actually know who did, but you're going to spend a lot of more time in your life regretting things that you didn't do than the things you did do. I wish I would have taken that trip. I wish I would have tried that job. I wish I would have, you know, called that guy back, whatever it might be, right? It's personal and professional. And so if you're afraid, I mean, I do lists. I do the pros and cons, right? Write it down if you need to and try to get to the core of why you're not doing it. And if it's because your gut is saying maybe not that it might not be a good thing, then that's fine. But if it's fear, power through it. And the more you do that, the more freeing it is. Take little steps, do it in small ways, because then you'll have practice taking those big leaps when the big decisions come up. It's a practice, it's a muscle, taking chances, taking risks and trying new things. And you just have no idea what door is going to open. How I got from engineering to marketing was exactly that. When I was in graduate school, I was on leave from the company I was working at the time. I had been working in a paper mill in Green Bay, Wisconsin. No shade on Green Bay. I'm a big Packer fan, but that was not what I imagined my career to be. And there was a call that went out from the CEO that said, like, hey, if people want to go to this graduate school program, we'll hold your job for you, cover, et cetera. And I'm like, well, okay, it's in Atlanta. I've never been to Atlanta before. I guess I'm just going to give it a shot. I think I can do this. And I did. I finished. It was a hard program. But at the end, the CEO kind of saw up for dinner. There were 16 of us that had nationally had taken, like, we had to get in, of course, and be qualified. When we graduated, he went around this table at dinner, and I was the only woman, which is pretty typical for engineers in the early 90s. Said, "Where do you wanna go next?" And everybody was listing what manufacturing site they wanted to go next. When it got to me, I said, "I would actually love to go work in headquarters. I'd love to go work in marketing just to see what they're doing there. Like, why do they keep changing everything on us back here in the manufacturing plant?" He's like, "Okay, I'll make that happen." And I got there. It was supposed to be a 6-month assignment, and after the first 3 months, I loved it so much. It was like, "This is it. This is where you're kind of orchestrating and, making decisions." And I said, "Can I stay longer? Do I have to go back?" Like, "No, you're great. You can stay." Right. So it's an N of one, but everybody has those kind of situations in their life where if you don't ask, if you don't play the lottery, you're never going to win. If you don't ask, then the answer is for sure no. So put yourself out there. Don't wait for opportunities to come to you. Go get them. And if somebody says no, then at least you know the answer. So
I want to thank you so much for sharing your story with us and sharing so many examples of what it looks like to say yes, for better, for worse, and encourage all of our listeners to do the same. I think it's a really powerful message.
well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my story. I really appreciate it.
Before we end the episode, we want to take a moment to reflect with you, our brave listeners, about what Karrie's story means to you. What do you want to say yes to? And how can you build the confidence to trust your gut? If today's show inspired you, tell us. Send an email or voice memo to hello@wednesdaywomen.org. Or keep the ripple going by giving us a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Your ratings help us grow and inspire even more people. This podcast is brought to you by Wednesday Women, an organization dedicated to increasing the visibility of women executive leaders. Learn more at wednesdaywomen.org. Thank you to our executive producers, Melissa Moody and Leslie Greenwood. Again, I'm your host, Ashley Lobbs, hoping you'll keep the ripple going. Until next time.